Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni with Untangled Healing. I am an empowerment coach and energy healer, and I mainly work with people with chronic pain, suffering with chronic pain and chronic illnesses to heal and reduce their pain. This podcast is all about healing. It's all about giving people ideas, hope, inspiration for things that they haven't thought about, haven't known before, or really just sit back and enjoy. So let's get started. Today with me here is Jessica Angileri. Jessica, hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about our conversation and where it leads us.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
Me too. It's always very it's informal, it's spontaneous, and I always trust that the right things are going to come out. So I'm really excited to get started. So really tell us a little bit about you. Where do we start?
Yeah. We might need a couple of hours, but in a nutshell, I am an erotic dance educator, sensuality, and feminine embodiment facilitator and mentor. So I work with women who are done with feeling like they're stuck and overwhelmed and really making decisions from that place of anxiousness and not knowing what their worth is and their standards. So, I help women reconnect with the essence of who they really are, their authentic self, and reconnect with their wisdom that lies within their body. So, I do a lot of work with the body and conscious movement and sensuality, and using that as a healing modality to really live a life, from their sacred purpose. So then they can fall in love with themselves, and women can then walk into a relationship as well, knowing how to love fully and at the same time have high standards in a relationship. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
So that's already you said so many different things, and I know it's so funny. I just had a conversation with one of my clients yesterday, talking about how to get more intimate in the relationship, and I mean, I was talking to a guy, and he was talking about his wife, and he was mentioning how she's feeling so overweight, and in that, just the thought of her, I guess getting naked or doing anything that was really, she was putting her off basically. And so I'm really curious, how is your work, helping, connecting with these kind of situations?
That's such a common one as well. And I feel like women have to know that they're not alone in that journey. And
Mm.
because there's so many expectations and so much pressure for all of us to fit into this little mold and this little box that we all have to look like Barbie. And now we're seeing this pop up all the time. And I feel like it just, it creates such a rigid expression of who we really are. We've all been given this body for a reason, and our soul, we are the soul living in this body. So that's the first thing to understand. And, all of these feelings of not feeling good enough and not beautiful enough, to know that this is not our truth. These are lies that we've been fed to fit into this society who has created, this one beauty standard who that doesn't serve the 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 beautiful abundant expression of a woman. And so I work with women to reconnect with their beautiful selves through pleasure practices, somatic practices, embodiment. And through that, we realize that we are the love living in this body. And then through that, knowing our worth, then we are able to go into a relationship and express our desires and, yeah, be magnetic and radiant. And I feel that we're so used to trying to please a man, and as I said, fit into these little boxes of what it means to be a beautiful woman and what it means to be intimate. And what we're missing out is the beautiful medicine of sensuality, which is really us in our authentic essence, rested in our body, rested in who we are. And when we are rested in that, then that radiance just, it glows out naturally. We don't have to do anything to alter ourselves. It's just, it's natural. Yeah, it radiates naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, but I just went
I
with it.
there's probably not one answer, but I think it's very interesting and very nice. I think to actually open that side of things that we don't normally talk about, right? I mean, it's people carry it with themselves. How do I feel about myself? What in me do I like? What I don't like? And actually also all of these things, the intimacy, the sense, being more sensual, all of that is something that we don't want to share. Actually, we don't want to share to ourselves. We don't want to share to our friends. Definitely, I said differently. I don't know why I said differently, but I guess sometimes you don't want to share it with your partner. But
Mm.
I was trying to say, it's definitely something that you feel if you're already uncomfortable with, you don't necessarily want to share it with others. Sometimes you get stuck in the victimhood of all of that. Like this is what I look like. I've tried forever to change, lose weight, whatever, and I can't. How are you now coming to help people open their eyes? I would love to hear a little bit more.
How can they feel more at home in their body, I suppose? Is that what your question is?
I,
Yeah.
I guess yes, because it's very deep, right? I mean, this is I guess when I was working more with people on their confidence, people would be able to really say, well, I know exactly the points and areas where I'm not feeling confident. And then the question was like, what do I do about it?
How?
And I
Yeah.
think it's
And we're
exactly
all,
it.
yeah. And we're all, we hear a lot. There's a lot of information coming at us to be, more in love with yourself, to feel more at home in your body, to surrender, to slow down, to quieten the mind, to to drop into your body, to know your worth. How do we do that? I mean, how do we do that? It's I feel like this is a question for all of us. The first thing is to feel safe and to feel safe in yourself, to explore these different aspects of yourself and to be able to drop from the mind and come down into the body. This is what my work is all about, to drop from the overthinking, the constant questioning. Why is this happening? How is this happening? What do I need to do? Why did he do that? Why am I not as beautiful as her? Why can't I be as successful? Why can't I experience, this beautiful, loving relationship? And stop asking all these questions and start dropping down into the body. Start feeling safe to become aware as the body. And we can do that through feminine practices, because as women in this body, your soul loves to be nourished by feminine practices like movement, but not the kind of dance that we all know, more conscious movement of how I am moving in this moment and how I can move this feeling of pain or anxiousness, and how can I let that flow in my body by just moving in a certain way? How can I meet with my breath? And the breath is this gift of life. It's happening all the time. We are always breathing, we're just not aware of it. So how can I connect with life? And when I connect with life, I begin to see beauty in my life. And I get to see and feel how beauty is moving through me all the time. How can I connect with the earth? I am one with the earth. So how can I slow down, stop getting caught up in here, slow down and connect with, with flowers, with incense, with even when you're cooking, how can I bring my senses into it? And this is the work of pleasure. How can I ignite my senses to connect with the world around me and the world within me? And the more we practice this, I even teach tantric practices like a breast massage. When we're connecting with our breasts, we're connecting with our heart, because our breasts are the extension of our heart. And when we connect with our breasts through the heart, we can understand, this feels good. And then I'm able to then move some of the heaviness and some of the pain that sits here, and I can allow my touch, the sense of touch through and my breath, to move some of this pain around without trying to understand why it's there, what else I can do. We're just here, one with this beautiful body and this gift of pleasure. And when we do these practices and be devoted to it, that's the thing. I always mention this, you can know all these practices, but if you're just doing something one time, you're not going to see results. You're not going to see the shifts happen, because, as you know, healing is such a lifelong journey, but we can notice subtle shifts that happen in our life. And so when we're immersed in these beautiful, sensual, soft practices, we start to live from that space of love. We know how that feels. We start to have more of appreciation of who we are and what we have to offer. We start to open our throat, especially if we're working with the womb space, which is what I do as well. And when our channel is opened, so our heart is open, our throat opens, we then speak from the place of knowing. We speak from a place of, not from the mind that's overworking and continues to keep you stuck in self-doubt and fear and guilt and continues to play those stories of shame. No, when this is open and we're connected with our heart and womb, something opens and we start to speak what is true to us. And then we can go into a loving, intimate relationship, and we then feel safe to open our heart to another, because we know how to feel safe within ourselves. We know how to feel present with ourselves. We know how to offer ourselves love through pleasure. And so we go into a relationship and we can express that to another. We allow ourselves to just drop back, stop trying to alter our body for this person, and our beloved starts to see something different in us as well. They start to be drawn into this natural, authentic radiance that occurs in this softness, in this surrender that happens.
I love what you're saying. I love it because I really think that you're totally right, and of course you're using it in the sense of intimacy and pleasure and touch and openness in that way. But it's so important to really mention that this is really the key for everything moving forward. When we keep thinking, when we are in our mind, when we are in our head, this is exactly, as you say, it's all of our doubts and negative thoughts and fears and worries. It's all there. And here we are talking about something that is natural and beautiful and all of that. And when we're in our heads, we it's so easy to not allow ourselves to just actually just feel into it. And yes, as you say, it's in intimacy, but it's in anything. It's so
Yes.
exactly, it's so interesting that we hear it so often to say, use your use your heart, use your gut, use anything else but your mind, and yet we go back to that default, and then we disconnect everything.
And it's a default, right? Yeah, that's why it's a whole process of, I like to say, of unlayering, then remembering and relearning. We all know how to do this and how to connect with this wisdom and how to really connect with the intimacy of life. It's a matter of remembering how to do that, because our default, our brain is not wired to work in that way. And it's considered a weakness, I suppose. That's been my journey anyway, to think and breathe from that place of intuition and your wisdom, because there's no logic to it. And this world requires logic. It requires us to have evidence backed up. And we're not taught to listen to ourselves. We're not taught to trust ourselves. We're not taught to nourish ourselves. This world, I think, is too busy tearing everyone down, and then we get caught up in that cycle. And so we need to remember how and unlayer some of those things like shame and guilt that we've been carrying in this lifetime, and it's generational as well. So it's up to us to retrain our nervous system to come into the body, into the heart, and live from that space. And then I'm not saying as well that we just, we live from love, and that sounds amazing, but we also have to be courageous enough and willing to speak from that place and live from that place, because this work is it's not easy, but it's the most transformative and the most nourishing one. Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what got you started in this direction?
Mm. Oh, I mean, we can go all the way back to my childhood and me feeling shame for listening to my intuition, me not having a voice, being punished for having a voice, me living out the good girl, the nice girl, because if I didn't, then I would be disciplined by my parents. I grew up in a very religious, Catholic, Sicilian upbringing, where the feminine way, the expression, the movement, the wisdom, following your intuition, it wasn't considered a thing. And then I grew up feeling shame for that. But that was my way of moving through life, but I was shamed for it. And so I learned very quickly how to gain love and validation in ways that were manipulative, especially when it came to men. I started to fit into the standards, the beauty standards, and that's how I got my attention from men. And so I became very sexualized. I started to use my sexuality as a way to receive validation and love. And I find that happens with women. We either go that way, or we fully repress our sexuality. And that's the pattern I've seen with women who've come to work with me. It's usually, I know it's not black or white, but it's usually one or the other. And we take on these two extremes. And so that's what happened with me. And then I was very disconnected, although it looked like on the outside I had it all together, because I learned how to be very confident. And I learned, like I said, to take on these beauty standards. But I never listened to myself. I never did what felt good for me. I did what everybody else wanted for me. So I became a teacher. I was a primary teacher. I'm glad I did that. I haven't done it for 7 years now, but I learned the beauty of embodiment and sensuality through children. I saw how open they were with their body. I saw how we come here with this spirit and it's lost very quickly. And I saw how the shadows started to play out in their life very quickly. I was teaching up to 12 years old, and I saw the transitions from how children are very open and very, they can be empathetic, they're egotistic, but they have this like primal nature about them. And then over the years, very quickly, we lose that. And very quickly, we start to close up, restrict our body, and start to take on those default ways of moving through life, like self-doubt, and we become stressed and, yeah, very disconnected. So through this journey, I learned that, and I also learned how to hold space for people. I also started to dance samba. So that was probably one of my biggest chapters, life-changing things that happened. I started dancing Brazilian samba. I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's a dance in Brazil where it's a cultural dance, and you probably know of Rio Carnival, and they wear those feathers and beautiful costumes. So I did that for over 10 years. I danced professionally, and that opened my eyes to another world of connection with my body. And I realized I could be sexual, but not in a way that was for anyone else. It was for me. And as I started to do this dance, I started to open up to more in my life. And that's the thing that women don't realize, is that when we connect with our sexuality in a sacred way, life starts to happen. We see the synchronicities, because that is our power. That's how we create life. And so, yeah, it wasn't until as I think with most women, we go through a really dark moment in our life. I went through a few relationships, and I continued to repeat cycles. And it wasn't until my last relationship, before the one I'm in now, that I just said, I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done with attracting men who are not committed, who are not fully emotionally invested. It was in that moment where I declared my life is changing. Didn't know how, didn't know when, I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's the interesting thing. Life just presents you opportunities for that to happen if we see it. And so, yeah, mixed with my dance, and then working with my healer as well, we started to work with the heart. Very quickly, I started to see changes in my life. I met a beautiful man who I'm with now, and I met him in Mexico. I moved to Mexico. I changed my whole life 7 years ago to come and live with him, be with him. And that's when everything started to shift. I knew I wanted to work with women. And so I started to connect all these pieces together in my journey. And I didn't want women to go through what I went through and all these challenges. I mean, that's where we grow. But from that, I was able to take elements of it and incorporate it into my work. And that's where my work of the erotic movement and working with the heart, and then I went into Tantra and started to combine all of this to offer spaces for women to feel safe and to explore their own sensuality, and so they can feel deeply connected and in love with themselves in all ways. So
And maybe touching on that, and I know that we nearly have to go in a minute, but tell us, can you give us an example of a success story of one of your clients that you worked with?
yes, it's interesting. A lot of them, they're very similar success stories. They come in unsure about their worth and so caught up in what their man or potential man in a relationship, what they want. And they walk out of my program realizing, no, it's not about him, it's about me. They start raising their standards. They start knowing what they want. They rewrite their story, because we often carry these stories that are not ours, these stories of how we're supposed to live our life and go into relationships and how we're supposed to feel. And it creates so much disconnection and numbness.
Yeah.
So they start to open up to pleasure, to orgasmic feelings inside the bedroom and out as well. Like, life opens up to them, and they actually have had women who have started to meet men, more conscious men, because they filter out the men who are who are still not there yet, who are not ready to grow. They're not ready to and willing to grow with them, and they start to realize, and they start to see, this is the man that is going to serve my heart, because I know how to do that for myself. And I see women feeling so much more rested in their feminine nature. A lot of them say that they feel scared to be there, or they feel shame around it, and they walk out feeling more confident, and they start owning it, and feeling great in that space. They realize that that's where they feel happy.
So you did mention your program. So maybe tell us a little bit more about your. I know I understand there is another one coming up. What is that about?
Yes.
How did it go?
Yes, the doors are just opening now. I have a 10-week group immersion, feminine remembrance, come home to yourself. And that's exactly what we do. We come home to the essence of us. We come home to ourselves. So we go through a process of shifting the feminine paradigm. We work with our menstrual cycle and the phases. I've had women who are not bleeding anymore, and they still get a lot out of that, because we learn how to work with our own rhythms, our own unique flows. We work with sexual shame and dismantling that, so then we can open up to healthy sexual energy and use that for manifestation. We work with the womb, and when we work with the womb, we start to work with generational traumas, and we release some of that through movement. So I love to work with these healing modalities, but in a non-invasive way, in a way that feels simple and that feels, easy to use. We work with tantric practices like the breast massage, as I mentioned, to open our heart. And we start to tap into the scary part, or the parts that we've felt scared about. And I help women to ignite that courage, that confidence, to activate their wild woman. In their wildness is how they start to feel more at home, actually. Yeah. So that's coming up. We start September the 23rd. So doors are just open now for feminine remembrance. And that's what we do as well. We remember our feminine essence. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds amazing. And so after when we finish our conversation, of course, I will share all of your links with our viewers or listeners. And of course, anyone wanting is welcome to get in touch and find out more about you. Jessica, it's been a real pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom and your journey and everything that you do for women of the world. It's amazing. And I know that also, of course, men can learn exactly the same thing of leading life through heart rather than just mind. I think that is
Mm.
the key to life.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for holding this space for me to share. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the women listening. Yeah, for
Thank you.
watching. Thank you.
Thank you very much.